Shifting our focus to United States now, where the Trump administration is recalling close to 30 career diplomats.
In a sweeping and highly controversial move that has sent shockwaves through Washington and diplomatic capitals around the world, the Trump administration has ordered the recall of nearly 30 United States ambassadors and senior career diplomats from postings across Africa, the Middle East, Europe, Asia, and Latin America, marking one of the most aggressive reshuffles of the American Foreign Service in modern history and signaling a determined effort by President Donald Trump and his senior advisors to reshape U.S. diplomacy around personal loyalty and ideological alignment with the administration's America First agenda, a decision that critics say risks undermining the professionalism, stability, and global credibility of the United States at a time of heightened geopolitical tension. According to multiple diplomatic sources and reporting by The Guardian, the affected officials include seasoned career Foreign Service officers who have served under both Republican and Democratic administrations and traditionally remain insulated from partisan politics, with chiefs of mission in at least 29 countries being informed that their tenures would end by January 2026, often with limited notice and minimal explanation, leaving embassies scrambling to manage leadership transitions while reassuring host governments that U.S. policy commitments remain unchanged. Administration officials have defended the recalls as both legal and appropriate, arguing that presidents have broad authority over ambassadorial appointments and asserting that diplomatic leadership must be fully aligned with the president's policy priorities, particularly after Trump's long-standing complaints during his first term that internal resistance from career officials slowed or diluted his foreign policy objectives, a view shared by allies of the president who described the move as a necessary step to dismantle what they characterize as a resistant deep state within the State Department. However, the scale, timing, and apparent political motivation behind the recalls have sparked fierce criticism from diplomats, lawmakers, and foreign policy experts, many of whom warn that politicizing the Foreign Service could weaken U.S. influence abroad, damage morale within the diplomatic corps, and create openings for rivals such as China and Russia to expand their reach in strategically important regions, particularly in Africa, which has been disproportionately affected by the recalls. With diplomats removed from posts in more than a dozen African countries, at a moment when competition for influence on the continent is intensifying, the American Foreign Service Association, which represents career diplomats, issued an unusually strong rebuke of the administration's actions, calling the recalls highly irregular and warning that the perception of politically motivated purges threatens the nonpartisan ethos that underpins effective diplomacy, while current and former diplomats speaking anonymously described widespread anxiety and anger within the State Department, noting that recalled officials were given just 90 days to secure alternative assignments in Washington or face forced retirement, a process many see as punitive and destabilizing. The controversy has been further inflamed by reports that the recalls are part of a broader plan to promote diplomats perceived as personally loyal to President Trump into senior leadership roles, with revised promotion criteria emphasizing alignment with administration priorities over traditional measures such as experience, regional expertise, and language proficiency, a shift confirmed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who acknowledged that hundreds of new nominations and promotions are underway under updated guidelines, a move critics say risks hollowing out institutional expertise in favor of ideological conformity. Lawmakers from both parties have expressed concern, with Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen warning that abruptly removing experienced ambassadors leaves critical posts vacant or weakened at a time when global crises, from wars in Ukraine and the Middle East to rising tensions in the Indo-Pacific, demand steady and credible U.S. engagement, while some Republican foreign policy veterans have privately cautioned that sidelining career professionals could reduce the effectiveness of American diplomacy and complicate relations with allies accustomed to dealing with seasoned envoys. International reaction has also been cautious, with foreign governments seeking clarity on whether recalled ambassadors are being replaced by acting officials or politically appointed loyalists, and diplomats in Europe and Asia privately expressing unease about potential shifts in U.S. positions driven by domestic political considerations rather than long-standing strategic interests. The recalls come amid a broader effort by the Trump administration to remake the federal government in its image during the president's second term, including the rollback of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives within the State Department, the reassignment or dismissal of officials perceived as insufficiently supportive of the president's agenda, and a renewed emphasis on transactional diplomacy that prioritizes bilateral deals over multilateral engagement, all of which have fueled debate about whether the United States is moving away from the institutional norms that have shaped its global leadership since World War II. Supporters of the administration argue that previous diplomatic practices failed to serve American interests and that installing loyal officials will ensure clearer execution of presidential directives, faster decision-making, and a foreign policy more closely aligned with voters who returned Trump to office. While critics counter that effective diplomacy depends on trust, continuity, and professional independence, and warn that transforming embassies into extensions of partisan politics could erode U.S. credibility and limit its ability to build coalitions or mediate conflicts. The long-term consequences of the recalls remain uncertain, but experts note that the sudden loss of institutional memory and regional expertise could take years to repair, particularly if experienced diplomats choose early retirement over reassignment, a scenario that could reshape the culture of the U.S. Foreign Service well beyond Trump's presidency. As the recalled ambassadors prepare to depart their posts and potential replacements are vetted, the episode has become a defining moment in the ongoing struggle over the future of American diplomacy, raising fundamental questions about the balance between political control and professional independence, the role of loyalty in public service, and how the world's most powerful nation chooses to represent itself abroad at a time when global order itself appears increasingly fragile.